Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Multi-Hyphenate. This is your bite-sized weekly podcast dedicated to those of us who are multi-talented, skilled, and abled. And we're really talking about how to navigate this life. Today, we are talking about navigating rest, okay? And how we are reclaiming our right to really take a pause. But before we do it, we always go back and to recap the multi-hyphenate move of the week from last week. Last week's episode was focused on the move of the week was focused on taking 2 hours of non-negotiable time, all right, that you were going to resist burnout, all right, and really push back against that and challenge yourself to do something that was either full of joy or allowed you to really truly rest. So it's kind of funny that we are still talking about rest a little bit more in this episode, but hopefully you did something that was more restorative, not even productive, but what did you do that you enjoyed that was really fun for you? 2 hours worth of a block of it. And if you didn't do it, you always have a chance to go back and to do it. Today, for episode 11, we are talking about rest. And again, these last couple of episodes have flowed pretty nicely and paired with each other as we are talking about an opportunity to pause and to rest. And when I think about rest, I really have to say that I think about my mother-in-law, because it wasn't until I met her close to 21 years ago did I hear someone talk about the concept of rest the way that she does. I would hear people talk about sleep. Oh, I'm sleepy. I got to go to sleep. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep, or I'm going to take a break. But she really talked about rest as a tool to recharge and to rejuvenate, and still does. And I find myself talking about it in my home and with friends about an opportunity to rest. And it doesn't mean that I am going to sleep physically, but how am I intentionally and restoratively taking myself off the clock to rejuvenate and to reignite and to recharge? And that's what rest is. So every time I think about, or even I say, oh, I'm going to go rest, or have you rested? I always think about my mother-in-law, my mother-in-love, in a very, very endearing way. Because as a multi-hyphenate, rest could feel like a luxury. It could honestly feel like something that you can't afford to do because you can't take the time to do it. Maybe you don't have the space to do it, or even that you haven't even earned it yet, because society may say, right, you got to grind, you got to work, we got to overwork, we got to hustle, do all these things. You can rest when you're dead, sleep when you're dead. I've heard that so much. And honestly, we may end up putting ourselves into very unsafe and unhealthy situations if we continue to approach rest as a luxury, something that we cannot and haven't yet been able to afford, because it's not in that way. If we keep focusing on the production of everything that we do, then guess what's coming? Talked about it last week. Burnout, exhaustion is coming. And I don't want to wear exhaustion like a badge. I don't want to wear it as something that is supposed to be good, because it's not. Exhaustion doesn't help me to produce more. It actually causes me to do less. And the quality of what it is that I'm doing will suffer immensely if I'm not focused on how I'm actually resting. So here's a thought. What if rest wasn't a reward? What if rest was actually a part of the work? The same way that last week I talked about scheduling in that time when you're taking a break and when you're not doing anything. What if rest was a part of the work that it is that we do? In this episode, we collectively, even though I'm talking about it, we're really thinking about shifting the narrative on rest, because it isn't laziness. It actually is leadership. It is power, and it's resistance, right? We've heard that rest is resistance. And if you connect with different schools of thought, even um, Black liberation theology that really talks about rest as a way to honor our ancestors in a way that we can honor ourselves even more deeply, then this is going to be speaking to you. All right. Learning how to rest is a part of learning to trust that who you are is enough. And I wrote that down and I'm reading it right from my computer, even when you're not producing, okay? Because much of our identity as multi-hyphenates is tied up into what we're doing. It's tied up into the doing, into the movement. Yeah, we gotta move the needle. We gotta push the ball further up the hill. But what if rest wasn't about what it is that we're doing? What if it was about how we are pouring back into ourselves? And this is looking at rest as being multi-dimensional, okay? Again, not up under the covers and eyes closed, but how are you resting creatively? How are you resting socially? How are you taking up rest spiritually? How are you taking up rest physically? How are you doing all of those things to be able to recharge into who it is that you are? And I do want to challenge you, as I'm challenging myself, to look at rest in a different way. Because whatever season you find yourself in right now as a multi-hyphenate won't be the season that you're always in. Maybe you're in a very busy, maybe you are in a very busy season. We all know that seasons come to an end. It's going to slow down a little bit. Maybe you're on the other side where it's a little slow. Guess what? Get ready for the busyness. But if we don't start to look at rest as a part of the work that we do, we are going to experience burnout, leave more room for that procrastination, for that imposter syndrome to come on in. But I want to give you a couple of points, a couple of creative and even practical strategies for how you can look at rest in a way that that maybe you haven't thought about before. And a couple of these, you might say, listen, I thought about it. I get it. I'll do it. Rest is not something that I'm not familiar with, but I was able to really reconnect with and learn some other things. So first off, defining what rest means to you, because what it means for my mother-in-law means something different for me, means something different for you. And again, this is about how are you restoring your energy? How are you being still for some people? Maybe for some people, it's about being in solitude. Some people might look as rest as travel. Whoever and whomever and however you look at it, define what rest means for you and then go forward with that. Secondly, talked about this before, schedule it like you schedule your work. Okay. Again, a way to recharge. I've been doing better with scheduling in rest physically with movement and with exercise. So that's on my calendar. I make time for that to pour back into myself. And even though I'm, working out, but I'm also recharging and I'm replenishing, for myself. So block off the time for it, make it happen, make it non-negotiable as your way to challenge the grind culture. This isn't about a luxury. This isn't about something that's a reward. You can afford it and it's yours. All right. Third thing, think about whatever your pre-rest ritual looks like. For some people, of course, if you cook, if you bake, you know what the ritual or what the standard is, for how you prepare to cook. You gather your ingredients. You make sure that your space is set up the way that you want. You get out your pots and pans or mixer or whatever it might be. But before you get ready to rest socially, physically, or even creatively, what's that ritual look like for you? Are you gathering materials? Are you gathering supplies? Or are you just going into it blindly? I don't know. But think about what that ritual looks like for you. Maybe it comes with a playlist that's specifically for that creative time. Maybe you have to change your clothes and that kind of signals, all right, we are shifting gears and we're doing something different. But create that ritual for yourself where you signal to you that we're getting ready to do something different. Next thing, I found this to be interesting, and I like the idea of this, is to try looking at your rest and auditing it, right? I always think about auditing when it comes to taxes, and I don't want to be audited by the IRS, but are you able to look at your week prior and be able to audit it and to evaluate and to assess it and ask yourself, where did you rest? Did you rest? Do you need more? Do you need less? And I can think about my week prior, and in terms of auditing my rest, there were some other things that I definitely could have done creatively. I did focus a little bit more on the physical side of rest, but there were some things I could have done more creatively when it came to rest. But, are you really calling some things rest that maybe are not rests? Okay. And then the fifth thing is to be active in your rest. Show up, be a participant. We're not just moving through the motions. Again, we're not just being mindless, letting things happen, but show up and actually be there. So if that means putting the phone down so that you can focus on whatever it is that you're doing, do it. I love do not disturb nowadays. Put the phone on do not disturb while you're watching your show because you don't want to be interrupted. Or even while you're eating your meal, put the phone on do not disturb. But be in there and be active in it and be able to see how that recharges you. Here's our quote for the week. Comes from Miss Sojourner Truth, all right? And she says, rest is not idleness, and to lie sometimes on the grass under the trees is by no means a waste of time. And for all that Sojourner Truth did to push forward the culture and to uplift others, I found it very, very reaffirming that she said rest is not idleness. You're not idle. You're not just sitting by doing nothing, right? But sometimes you are laying on the grass, under the trees, but it's by no means a waste of time because something productive is happening to us emotionally and socially and mentally, and even physically when we are resting. Thank you, Sojourner, for that. Your multi-hyphenate move of the week is to choose one type of rest and plan out a 30 to 60 minute block. Just like before, again, last week, a 2-hour block of this, a block of that, a block of this. I do want us to focus on how we are recharging, but choose a type of rest. Maybe it's creative, it could be social, it could be physical or mental, where you are showing up. And here's the challenge. Write down how you feel before you engage in that rest, and write down how you feel, or even check in with yourself about how you feel afterwards. Okay. And then ask yourself, what do I need to keep doing? What do I need to keep doing to protect this version of me? And sometimes that means turning the phone off, saying no to people, not showing up all the time for all the things. But how can you protect that version of yourself? Rest is radical in a world that tells us to keep on grinding. But for us as multi-hyphenate people, we do carry the torch of vision and creativity and ambition, but we cannot carry it if we are constantly depleted. And rest is our way of recharging. So you don't have to prove your worth through exhaustion or through overwork. There is no badge, there's no cookie, there's no award for that. And you don't have to hustle to prove your value. Rest is something that we all deserve and that we all have already earned just because of our existence. So I really dare you to protect your rest, to prioritize it, and to practice it. And that's from me to me, and from me to you. So until next time, I do want you to consider rest. Go back and to listen to all of the episodes that we've talked about, all of these different topics of how we are navigating our life as multi-hyphenates, because this is about progress over perfection. It's about how we continue to stay inspired, how we fine tune our focus, how we increase our efficiency, and how we keep on keeping on. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Confessions of a Multi-Hyphenate.